welcome to another episode of Talk'n TRM, the podcast dedicated to travel risk management. My name is Bex Deadman, also known as Travel Risk Bex, and I am a travel risk management consultant. Today, I am joined by somebody who I have met along my journey. I was just actually just talking to her before we kind of went on air, just to say, actually, this is really exciting for me because I know her of all the work we've been doing in the standards work and the development. She's been an avid member of all of the group discussion work that we've been doing, but I know nothing about her personal story. So this is going to be as exciting for me as it is for you guys to kind of find out how she found herself doing the role that she does, which is always what these podcasts are about. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll ask the first question. Who are you and what do you do?
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. My name is Christine Connolley. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, but I split my time between there and Taos, New Mexico, where you find me here today, within an arm's reach of my third cup of coffee. I'm a senior crisis manager with BCD Travel and a travel risk management consultant with our consulting arm at Advito. In my work, I focus on travel risk management, specifically helping organizations evaluate and strengthen their travel risk programs. And that might mean reviewing their policies, assessing program maturity, advising on sourcing third-party assistance providers, or helping them think through incident management, planning, or traveler communications. What I care about most is helping them looking at all the moving parts, actually how they all come together in practice, whether that's how their program supports their employees and, when that really matters, whether that's that structure that's in place and how that reflects the realities of those people traveling, where they're going, who they are, and what they might actually encounter.
Here you are, talking my language straight away. So one might think that sort of as the TMC piece, if you like, because you're part of the BCD group and the consulting arm of that group, that that's just part of it, isn't it? And often the travel management company can kind of get siloed. Here we are, that word again, into just perhaps working with the procurement team, or perhaps there's a travel team there, but it really depends on the organisation and the setup and the structure, doesn't it? And we've always talked about travel really does sit in different places in different organizations. It just depends how that company set up from the beginning and what their needs were and kind of how they've grown. So what I'm loving you talking about straight away is this idea that actually it's about how this whole thing comes together holistically, because
Right.
traditionally the TMC looks after the booking piece, but obviously then we bolt on through data all of the other services. So what are some of the challenges that you face when kind of, because I love that bit too, it's kind of when it comes all together, and but what are some of the things that you not struggle with, but the clients struggle with in this space?
Right. Well, in this work, I've really got have had the opportunity to have a really great window to see, how the organizations, how they're structured, right? So what their range of approaches are,
Mm.
and to see, what works, what doesn't, what tends to break down, where those gaps are, and some of the things I've seen is that some of those areas are usually like traveler awareness. Often companies are so interested in protecting their employees that they often overlook that it's also the traveler's responsibility as well. So they sometimes overlook that duty of loyalty, the responsibility of their travelers to look out for their own safety, to review the rules, review the destination information before they depart, so they know what to expect when they arrive. Some of the other areas that the companies overlook might be risk assessment. Sometimes they don't have a methodology for risk assessment and risk mitigation in place. Um, so that's often some areas that they miss.
100% hear you, and you just touched on sort of the two big areas that, again, we focus on such a lot, and it's something we talk about a lot with the ISO work that we do as well, isn't it? Because you can have all of the technology in the world, and I think often organizations are very focused on solution led products, and they're not necessarily thinking about the part that they play in that. And actually, what is that decision making process before a trip even happens? That pre travel risk assessment, what does that look like? Because
Right.
often, from a, obviously, you and I both know we both worked for travel management companies in the past, and well, you now and me in the past. But often it feels as though that's the starting point, and it often is for corporates as well. But what is that process before? What does that actually look like? And we shouldn't be bolting that into the booking process, which is again what
Right.
sometimes happens. And the other piece that you've touched on is the traveler awareness piece, because again,
Mhm.
I think, especially in that travel management company realm, where we've got all of that sort of noise outside of the program, the purpose for having the program in place can get lost, can't it? And people are often focusing on, well, I might be able to get it 50p cheaper over here, or if I book the hotel over here, I can get my
Right.
loyalty program, or whatever it is. And that completely then dilutes the purpose of a travel risk management program, because that data
Mhm.
is just so important. And
Right.
yes, you can get that data back in through different sources, but my goodness, it's so much easier, and the data is so much stronger when you push that through your travel management company. So I'm really interested just to get your opinion on something. um, I've always felt that one of the struggles that travel management companies have is that sometimes we're having the wrong conversation with the wrong people, which sort of ties into
Right.
what you were saying about putting all the dots, or pulling it all together, because it's sat in procurement and sometimes finance. It's seen as a price to control, and the conversation tends to be around fees and reducing those, and reducing the costs of the travel itself, which of course then incurs service reduction and things like that. And I think COVID was a great example of this, when TMCs were not being able to make transaction fees because there weren't bookings coming through, yet their services were still really, really important. Where do you think that conversation sort of needs to move to, and who do you think needs to be involved to move that from a cost to control, which is where travel sits currently, into this sort of people risk management piece, which is what we're sort of talking about? Do you see that changing?
Well, yeah, this actually gets into some of my golden nuggets that I prepared, where
Oh,
it's
look at us.
where it's like, risk management. I think it's sometimes where it's seen as a travel function, and it's really a business resilience function. It is, and whereas going back to that risk assessment piece, where that methodology sometimes it's sitting under travel where they don't have those skills for that assessment. But if they were to talk, with that resilience, if they had a risk management department or their insurance department, if they were to be more in touch with the other departments within their organization that may have that methodology, then if they weren't so siloed, they could have that methodology with one another and adopt that throughout their organization. But oftentimes they're so siloed that they see that travel risk management or travel security under that umbrella, that they don't tie those two together or see that they are really the same thing. So they need to, instead of seeing travel security falling under just as a travel function, it's really business resilience. It's really business continuity. So it's about taking that under the umbrella of that and realizing that it actually touches every piece of that. Travel security touches every piece of your organization.
Exactly. Oh my goodness
Yeah.
me, what a brilliant start. Thank you. And I think it's just so strong. It's exactly the message that we try and get across all of the time. And by doing this, you're actually going to create not only stronger relationships and understanding between the departments, and ensuring that you're, hitting other people's objectives, but you're going to make it all more compliant as well. Because when people feel heard, when other
Right.
departments and the travelers feel heard in the entire program, and they understand why the program is there, you're going to just naturally get more compliance. So, okay, thank you for that. Let's dive into a little bit more about where before you got here, and kind of what is your journey into travel risk management, and what is your why and your drive? Because I have to tell the audience, every single meeting I had with BSI when we first set these groups up, everything I've done, every session I've been to, every group meeting we've had discussing the future of these standards, Christine has absolutely been there, as has one of her colleagues. You're dedicated to this beyond dedication. So tell me all about that, please.
Yeah, we're definitely, my organization, we're definitely very passionate about the standards, and we're looking forward to pushing that through, or very passionate about ISO 31030. And we know it's a guidance. We'd like it to push through to as a standard. So we, in my organization, we're really passionate about that. As far as I'm concerned, when I think about it, when we talk about risk, that conversation usually starts with, where someone's going, that country, the city, what are those local risk factors, what that might be. And obviously that's really important. But I think if we stop there and we're not talking about who's going, we really risk, missing something important, because every traveler brings their own lived experience to that journey, and their own sense of what feels safe, what feels risky, and how they navigate the world. And some of the most significant risks aren't tied to geography. They're shaped by the person's identity and their lived experience, those quiet, often unspoken things that really influence how they move through the world. And I've spoken about this before at I think the BTM Travel Risk Summit was the first time that one of my earliest experiences, one of my first childhood memories is after my family, my family drove overnight from Denver, where I'm from, where I grew up, to Omaha, Nebraska, where my family is from. And I woke up that morning after the overnight drive to learn that my grandmother had been a victim of a really violent attack. And a man had broken into her home and beaten her savagely. And thankfully, she survived. But the man got away. And frankly, she and my family had never been the same. That man slipped in through an unlocked window because it was a really hot summer night, and my grandmother had left that window unlocked. So it is, no surprise that every night before I go to bed, I ensure that every door is locked, every window is locked. So that's my lived experience. And I really think that, our travelers are no different. Each of them carries a memory or an experience that quietly shapes, how they perceive risk, whether that's a car accident, a health scare, or just, simply a moment that reminds them how quickly a sense of safety can vanish. So these kind of experiences, they really shape how people move through the world and how they respond to unfamiliar places, uncertainty, and vulnerability. So that really helps shape my why, because, safety isn't the same for everybody. And it's really not something we can afford to treat as one size fits all.
Wow, my goodness, I'm so horrified to hear that story. And completely understand why that shaped every single thing that you have done ever since then, and has been your drive through this. Right, I underestimate the importance of any family member, but certainly not a grandmother. And it's just, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad she did survive it, although it was a horrendous ordeal. Um, it's interesting to me because obviously I never know what people are going to say when I ask them that question. And some people are really honest and get really personal, like you just have. And I think we just need to take a moment just to kind of go, okay. What is interesting to me is that it's exactly that you just described, that moment, that impact that really drives us forward. And we all do have different ones, but
Right.
that's what drives us forward in this space. But what I'm really enjoying hearing when you're talking is that you now see other people and their vulnerabilities and want to support that, right? And you're understanding that people are coming to the table with different things. We talk about this such a lot.
Mhm.
And I love the way that you're using lived experience. It's exactly a term I use constantly, you know. It's you can you can try and give people an overview of things, but you have to, if you're going to make this work, spend the time to understand who your people are, find a space for them to
Mhm.
be able to share with you safely the things that make them vulnerable, and also
Right.
then almost circumnavigate that to put the other stuff there that they're never going to share with you too, right? So yeah.
And that's absolutely right. You will never know all of the information that will inform their experience. There will always be an LGBTQ plus member of your workforce that will not share that. There will always be a member of your workforce who's pregnant that may not want to be ready to share that information. There may be a member of your workforce who's HIV positive that will never share that information. So it is imperative that you make the information available to them so that you can empower them with that information so that they have that so that they can safely travel, or they have the power to refuse travel
Yeah.
safely and it doesn't imperil their employment or put them in a negative situation.
Now that's something that's never come up before, and I think that's so valuable and important. I remember having a conversation a really, really long time ago about to somebody who didn't really understand why you would work with a travel management company, and I was just sort of saying around the duty of care piece because again, it's obviously something that we talk about. And then he reflected on the fact that he'd just recently sent somebody to Uganda. This was years and years and years ago, and I said, okay, what? How did you book that? What did you put in place? Well, I just told him to go on to BA and to book the flight, and I was like, okay, what what then? And he just had to sort everything else out himself. And in my mind, and then I just asked the question. I was like, how well did you know this person? Do you know anything about their sexual identification, or how anything that could put them in that sort of danger? Knowing obviously that Uganda is has some extremely strong laws in place. And he just saw the colour
Right.
drain from his face. Now, fortunately, nothing happened at all. But that was my sort of like this is the thing. This is what we need to do. And you wouldn't have known. And you don't have to even ask these questions of people because you shouldn't be expecting people to divulge everything about them. Why would they? We talk about this a lot. Companies aren't always that trustful. You don't, as an employee, you don't necessarily trust your employer. So why on earth would you kind of divulge all of this personal information, despite whatever culture the company tries to create? That there will always be an employee and a boss relationship. So how do you then protect them? And it is about making this stuff available, and then just making it accessible and making sure people understand that it's there. And I think what's important is making sure that the whole organization is involved in that, right? So you have the managers and the line managers knowing, because they'll probably know more about their team than the travel manager would, for example. So making sure that it's accessible across the whole organization, which is exactly what you're talking about in everything that you're saying. Um, ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, and having the information available also, but also pushing some information too, right? So if they know they've booked this trip, so pushing some of that information out to them as well. So they're not always having to search for it. So if they know they're going to that location, pushing the information to them so it's at their fingertips, so they don't always have to go searching for it as well.
And I think we talk about this a lot, making it just as easy as possible. Because again, a traveler can have several applications
Mhm.
on their phone, can't they? So apps from the airline, apps from the travel
Oh yeah.
management company. an app from the security company if they're working with a different assistance company, maybe the insurance company is throwing something out there because everybody. So again, it's about, I think, and this is the future of it all, isn't it? It's about making sure that your travelers have the information they need at a time that they need it that is actually useful to them, rather than kind of just blasting them with, a 50-page document about Uganda with all of the different things that could happen.
Right.
Because the reality is,
Right.
we don't digest information like that anymore, do we? And our younger generations certainly aren't going to sit there and read a 50-page document. So it's this relevance that I love that you're,
Right.
and what I'm hearing echoing in everything that you're saying is, again, getting to know your people, understanding what their needs are, so that you can build something around it, which is really important. And that's, I guess, what's the fun about the consultancy piece, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I told you that we were going to be whizzing through it, and I'm just conscious. I want to make sure that you've had a chance to sort of talk about everything that you want to talk about. But I know, and we've touched on some of your golden nuggets, but we'll try and we'll put some more in, because I know that you've got loads. So what?
Yeah.
I guess people wanting to get into this space, um, it. What can you tell them as to how to approach this? What are your golden nuggets in travel risk management?
Okay, golden nuggets. Let's see. I think my first one is that the traveler experience. This is to travel managers and to organizations. So your traveler experience is your brand in motion. So how you protect, support, and communicate to your employees really reflects your organization's values. So if safety is an organizational priority, it should be woven through every aspect of your organization, especially the travel risk program. And travel risk management is a people first function. It's really not a compliance box to check. So, how you treat travelers in moments of stress and uncertainty is really a living example of your organization's values. So, as I said, it's your brand in motion.
Absolutely adore that. And I think it's something that we just don't think about enough. I know that when, again, working for a travel management company, we would kind of brand the travel programmers, right, to try and actually make it a thing within the company, to make people understand, brand it as the organization's travel program, but just sort of say, this is a thing, this is the hub, this is where it all fits together. Because travel is often seen as this kind of, it's the thing I need to do to get the other thing done that I need to get done. And it just kind of sits over here, doesn't it? And
Mhm.
either people are left to their own devices, or, and I understand that, people, we've always talked about this in with TMCs and in this space. Travel is so personal. So people do have their own opinion on how they want to do things. Most people have got
Yeah.
experience of travel in one kind or another.
Right.
And I guess that's what's so nice about this space moving forward, is we are trying to bring all of that in to ensure that people are as safe as possible. But there's also this kind of fine line as well. But I like this idea of making this program bigger than just the travel management company's online booking tool, making sure that all of the people
Right.
within that organization understand what the program is. I've spoken to so many companies
Mhm.
over the years who say, "Oh, I've got a travel management company. They're called Concur," and straight away you go, "Hmm,
No,
that
you
is
don't.
something." Right? We know, and there'll be other people listening to this going, "Yeah, right. What are you talking about? That we know that that's the tool, right? It's an online
Right.
booking tool with an expense tool. There's always going to be a travel management company of some description sitting behind that tool. So when a company
Right.
doesn't, when you're talking to a company and they don't know who the TMC is, that's a concern, because
Yeah.
they're not understanding the program. The program has sort of not been built out in that kind of, and it's not that you need to understand all of the different moving parts of the travel industry, but you do need to understand all the different moving parts of your program and how they're being fulfilled by your different suppliers. But yeah, just going back to this idea of your brand and movement, I love it. I hope you use that all the time in your slogans. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, we're their partner, as a TMC, we're their partner. we're
Yeah.
their partner in that, but that's their brand. But we're their partner in safety,
Of course, no, and I fully
Yeah.
understand that. But and this is the thing, isn't it? I think this is the thing to be aware of, and we talk about this a lot. Health and safety, which everybody is kind of, we do it from a legal perspective, and we do it certainly from a sort of moral obligation these days. Travel risk management is sometimes considered health and safety in motion, or it's people in motion. All those
Mhm.
things that you put in to protect your staff in an office, what are we now doing while they're on the move and they're moving through these different environments? And something could happen at any time. And in the world that we live in today, it's going to be on social media pretty damn quickly if it's bad. And that's a major issue for your brand straight away, isn't it? So,
Oh, yeah.
and I think this tick box exercise that companies go through is exactly what we're all trying to move away from, and it's exactly what you talked about. It is people first. It is understanding
Right.
the program,
Yeah.
bringing the data to life, and building it, I always say, from the ground up, and then go from there.
Yeah, but that kind of goes back to the that it goes to touches every piece of the organization, right? When you're talking about somebody going on social media, and then that goes back to reputational, how it can reputation management, and that got me just thinking about uh, there's one example of this that I often share or often reference is Malaysian Air Flight 370. If you remember
Mhm.
that disappeared in 2014 off of when it departed Kuala Lumpur. There was
Yeah.
a U.S. Technology company that had 20 senior staff members on board that flight. And so you can imagine this company, after this flight disappears, they're dealing with this huge emotional loss of life. The, this huge emotional loss of life, the emotional toll that takes, but the disruption to their operations, business continuity, but also the reputation, the hit to their reputation.
Yeah.
On top of that, they are a publicly traded company. So there was a huge, dip in their stock after that happened. And then they were, subject to a leveraged buyout the following year after that. So you can see that touched every aspect of their company. So again, it's not just travel risk management. You see how that hit every bit of their company from one aviation incident.
And it's that incident piece, isn't it? And it's so we just have no telling as to how that's going to happen. But I think this is the art of risk management and good travel risk management. Stuff has been happening for the last 50 years. So we can learn from all of this stuff and it's going to keep happening. So there's no kind of, oh, what you hear all the time, oh, it's unprecedented. This was unprecedented. And I'm like, is it though? Was that totally unprecedented? Like we have had stuff happen. What can we do to learn from this and what can we do better? And that's the continuous cycle, isn't it? So before we finish, is there any other
Yes.
golden nuggets that you would like to impart on our listeners?
Yes. Let's see. So another one would be you can't outsource duty of care. Of course, third party assistance providers, they play such an important support function, but responsibility really starts and ends with the organization. And legal liability is not transferable. Critically, that organization has to own their strategy, even if another company supports that execution. But beyond that legal liability, it's really just wise management. It's just good, smart management to take care of your employees. So even if you have International SOS, Crisis 24, which are fantastic organizations to help you with your support your duty of care, you really have to own that strategy. You really have to have a handle on your travel risk management and duty of care.
Yes, now you've got me spurred off on a whole other conversation we could have for half an hour, which we're not allowed to do. But what I will say, but oh my goodness, yes, 100%. And I think this is part of the tick box exercise, isn't it? It's part of this understanding. And I think that's what
Mhm.
31030 really helps support because that first piece, those very first areas of that standard are what is the scope of your program? Why are you traveling? Who travels? What are the risks inherent to your business, but also your people? And actually,
Right.
because of the type of work that you do, what is your program? And often, I think, certainly from a TMC side, when we first start, maybe winning a new client or something like that, it's actually quite difficult to ascertain that from organizations. They're not that good at being able to actually express what their program is. They can be quite sort of top level about it, the sort of types of people that travel. They can probably give you their top 10 destinations, but there's a lot of vagueness around
Mhm.
everything else. And actually, this is, and then it's almost passed to the travel management company or the assistance company or the insurance company to look after that, and that's almost the tick box of the risk piece done. And yes, you're absolutely right. It cannot be done like that. And actually, if you just spend a bit of time getting this bit right, sitting down with data, sit down with your partners because they can talk to you about the data. They can make it make sense to you because we all know data is not great in the travel world, but knowing what that program is will allow you to have better relationships with your suppliers moving forward because you'll know where to direct your energies.
Absolutely.
You guys can support better. It's just a little bit of hard work at the beginning just to get your head around what is our travel program? Why do we travel? Do we want to travel? Actually, yes, we can do all these other great things because we travel. Let's now put some stuff around it. And that's the bit I think that's missing often as well. So nailed it, Christine. Lovely. I love that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my lovely, for joining us. It's been great to actually hear about your story. Absolutely broke my heart, and I wasn't expecting that at all. But thank you for being so honest, and thank you for sharing with us so openly. But also, thank you for doing everything that you do in travel risk management, for obviously keeping people safer and doing a great job at BCD, but the passion and the desire for change and to make this into something more. I am grateful to you for, and I'm glad to be able to share that story with people today. So before I sign off, I'll let you just say a few final words and say goodbye to everybody.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and safe travels.
Love it. So you have been listening to another episode of Talking TRM, the podcast. Today, our guest has been Christine Connolley from BCD. Thank you so much for joining us and to really bring this back to the reality again. This is about people and keeping them safe. Tune in another couple of weeks for our next episode. And in the meantime, stay safe.